We are going to talk about tips, tricks, and observations when using rapid fill and fine finish. Okay, today we're going to talk about the surface of EVA foam. One of the problems that you may have noticed is that when you heat seal EVA foam, especially the low density foams, that very even surface starts to wobble a little bit. You get these little moguls that happen. For example, here is a piece of EVA foam that I picked up. It's a light gray, and if I can show it, see if I can hit the light just right, you can kind of see this side has been heat treated right here, and this side has not been heat treated. And if I hold a little flashlight over it, there we go, that kind of shows it. You start to see the wobbling little moguls that happen on the heat treated side that doesn't appear on the unheat treated side. This happens with different foams. Here's one, it's a black foam that I picked up. Let's see if we can get a nice, there we go. I think that kind of shows it. One side, this is not heat treated over here. This side's been heat treated. This doesn't seem to happen on the higher density foam. So let's see, for example, let me pull one of this. This is high density 2 mil foam, and despite the little splotches, despite the little splotches I had with the Plasti Dip, both sides seem to be equally smooth and even. So if you're going to use the rapid fill and you're trying to get a very smooth, even surface, it might be best not to heat seal your foam unless it's a real high density foam. So test your foam first, see what it's like, and then you'll have more flexibility on whether you want a real even surface or maybe you want that pimply surface. Maybe it'll add some extra texture that you may want. So that is that tip. Here's another little tip. When applying the rapid fill, there's a couple different ways you can apply it. I am going to take a very firm short hair brush, and I think I'll only work on half of this. That way my fingers won't get any gooier than what they are. But when you first put it on, you can just kind of glob it on in any way you want. Just like that. And then you need to really work it around. Spend some time going different directions, doing little swirls like this. The more you do it, the better the results you're going to get. If you just brush it on firmly and stuff, you're not going to get nearly as good a results as if you try to work it into those pores. So doing little swirls like this will really help quite a bit. And then at the end, if you take your brush and very lightly wipe back, you'll wipe back most of those brush strokes, and then you have very little to sand, and that will make the process go a lot faster. Another thing that you can do if you want to sand even less when using the rapid fill is, again, apply it on generously. Work it in really good. A lot of manipulating that stuff back and forth and every which way to work it into those pores. Once you do that, then you can take a paper towel, fold it over somewhat like a squeegee, and then very lightly do a wipe back. And you'll have even fewer strokes. In fact, once it dries and shrinks back a little bit, the surface will be very, very smooth. It'll dry quicker, and when you sand it, you'll have hardly any sanding to do on it, and that's a big plus. I have a piece of EVA foam that I've coated with the rapid fill and fine finish, and I'm getting ready to sand it to get it smooth. And if you've ever used this product before, or any product that you put on top of EVA foam and you start sanding it, with a rigid sandpaper like this one, the paper ones, you'll know that the corner of the paper will catch sometimes if you're not careful on the foam and nick it. And so then you'll have this scar. It's a battle scar, but it's a battle scar you don't want. If you don't want those battle scars to occur all the time when you sand, then you may want to move to a different type of sanding product, like these sanding sponges. I picked these up at on Amazon. They also have them at Home Depot and Lowe's and all your home centers. But they're very flexible, they're soft, and when you sand with them, I've never ever nicked with my edges on the foam, so it works very well. Another product that works really well is the 3M flexible wobbly sandpaper, and I'm not quite sure what it's made out of, but it's some sort of elastic rubber plastic type of material, and sometimes I'll put a sanding mesh behind it and it works really well. Again, the edges are so soft you don't nick your foam while sanding it. I have even placed a sanding block behind it like this one, and it sands very well without nicking the edges. Marvelous. Another thing about the Rapid Fill and Fine Finished, let's see, let's get some beauty shots here. Well, my containers aren't so beautiful. I've been using them, so there's goop all over them. But if they're sitting on the shelf for quite a long time, let's say you haven't used it in 6 months, things start to happen, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So if I take, and these have been sitting on the shelf for about 7 months. These are the original batch that I produced and I sent out to different artists around the country to test. And so I haven't opened these really in 7 months, and so they've been sitting there. This is the fine finish. If we open up the fine finish, and let's see if we can get a really good shot of that. Put a little flashlight on it. I don't know if that helps. There we go. Yeah, I think you can see a little separation starting to happen. No big deal. Take a stir stick and stir it up, and it should be good again. So if I take a stir stick, the consistency still feels good. Hasn't thickened. There we go. Good to go again. With the Rapid Fill, when a new batch is made, it is a thick, not quite paste substance, but as it sits on the shelf, the particles in this product start to absorb some of the medium, and then it becomes even thicker and more pastier. It's not a problem. It still works very well. Again, this particular one has been sitting on my shelf for about 7 months. It is one of the originals that I used, and as you can see right here, it is thick. It is not coming out. But if I take some foam, where's some foam at? If I take some foam and get my brush here, you can see it's very thick and pasty. And work it in, it works great still. So it's not a problem. If it gets to the point where it's so thick, let's say it's been sitting for a year and you've left the lid open, you know, for hours and hours without recapping it and stuff, just add a little bit of water to it, stir it around, and it'll get it going again. When using the Rapid Fill and the Fine Finish with your brushes, if the brushes aren't cleaned well enough, they'll start to stiffen up. It's not a problem. If you take a little bit of rubbing alcohol that you can pick up at the store, let's see which brush is dirtier. Maybe this one. Just let it soak in there for just a few seconds. Move it around. And this brush isn't too dirty, but you can see right away some pigment is coming right off there. There we go. The rubbing alcohol dissolves it rather nicely. And then once you wiggle around a little bit, get it nice and clean, take a paper towel, squeeze it. Your brushes are nice and flexible again and ready to go. Let's say you're sanding and you get overzealous and you start sanding below whatever product you have on top of your EVA foam, and you start getting the fuzzies, those felt little things that pop up when you put some rough sandpaper on top of EVA foam and you sand too much. So if I take a 60 grit sandpaper, which I have right here, and probably need to bend this just a little bit. Okay, there we go. That's happening. Whisk this off. See if you can see this. If you look really closely, you can see the EVA foam has gotten really fuzzy, and now we have that felt type of issue going on here. So what I've been doing, if I ever get those, is I've been applying the Rapid Fill. What it does is it'll work into those fuzzies, and then it'll dry up, and then it'll make it more sandable than what you were able to do before. Okay, let's take a nice firm brush, apply some of the Rapid Fill, just like that, really work it in. Get rid of the excess, put it back in the jar, very lightly. Brush it smooth. Let's dry it. I'm going to put another coat because I see the grooves in there. It just needs a little bit more filling of the Rapid Fill. Those gashes with the 60 grit sandpaper went deep. I'm going to take just a little bit on a palette knife and just smooth it out there. That way I don't put on any more than I need. Let that dry and we'll sand it back here in just a little bit. Okay, back to our foam that was damaged with that 60 grit sandpaper, and we had all those little fuzzies on there. The Rapid Fill has dried. It has filled in all that. I can take my sandpaper, not bad, really smooth. I'll probably need to take some sandpaper around the edges and feather that, but that whole area that was damaged is repaired, and it didn't take a whole lot of effort. You can do textures with the fine finish. Very low profile textures, and of course very flexible. I have 3 different objects here. Here's a round object that I did, and you can see that rough, almost stucco like texture that's on there. On the flat surfaces, we have a very bold texture on this one, a very fine texture on this one. This is 2 mil high density EVA foam, and of course the product is very, very flexible. This has been drying for, what's the date on this? Oh, this has been going for 7 months, so the product is still very, very flexible. And I'm going to show you how to do it right now. So if I take a piece of foam, and this has already been coated with the Rapid Fill and fine finish, and so I probably don't even need to sand it smooth. I can just leave it just like that. Then I can take my fine finish, grab a paintbrush, and get all the water out of there. Let's get a bigger paintbrush. Here we go. Now, I just start glopping it on. Glop, 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 glop. See, I'll do both sides. Okay, that's probably good enough. Put that in the water. Cap my lid. Now, I'm going to take some paper towels, maybe just one paper towel. I'm going to crunch it up and fold it over something like that. And now I'm just going to lightly dab. I'm just going to do half of this and try to make it as rough as I possibly can. And that's pretty rough. On the other side, maybe I want some bolder strokes, so I can take my palette knife that I have right here, and by putting very little pressure at all on there, let it skim across the peaks of the fine finish. And you can flatten out some of those peaks and create more of a stucco looking pattern. So if you can see on there, one is very energetic, one's a little bit more calmer and peaceful. One has a lot of fine texture in it, and the other one has a lot of simple, bold textures. It's going to take overnight for that to dry, so I can't show you that right now because this is a quick tip. Once it dries, it'll shrink back a little bit, so it'll have a lower profile. And then what I do is just very light sanding with fine paper, and then go ahead and put my patina on it, whether it be silver, gold, maybe rub some acrylics or oils into there, and then you'll come up with something very similar to these two things. Okay, those are my tips. I hope they help, and if you have any more questions, just post them below. And fade to dark.